Can you really work remotely on a French long-stay visitor visa? Even if I tell you today that remote work is officially fine on a visitor visa, and it might be, that answer still doesn't cover the one thing that actually gets people in trouble. I'll get to that. Stay with me. For years, I've told you that remote work isn't compatible with the visitor visa once you become a French tax resident. I'm not taking that back today. But in June 2026, the French government gave an official answer to this exact question, and almost nobody explained it correctly. Some people are saying it is now fully legal. Others are saying nothing's changed. I've read the actual text, and let me show you what it really says. Bonjour, I'm Giga from Expat in France. French by birth, a global mobility professional, and I help English-speaking expats make their move to France. I am not an immigration lawyer or a tax advisor. Nothing here is personal advice for your situation. Now, let's start with why this question even landed on the government's desk in the first place. Here is what triggered this. Consulates and prefectures in France has been fairly relaxed about remote work on the visitor visa in practice. But French tax authorities were sending a very different message, much stricter and inconsistent with what applicants were hearing at their consulate appointment. That contradiction got formal enough that a member of the French Parliament, Deputy François Jernigon, asked the Interior Ministry directly to clarify this. The response was published in the Journal Officiel on June 23, 2026. And here is what it says. In plain terms, remote work for a foreign employer can be compatible with the visitor visa, but only under specific conditions. You cannot be integrated into the French job market, you must remain paid by your foreign employer, and you must remain fiscally attached to your country of origin. If all three hold, the ministry says you're considered non-active under French law, which is exactly the status this visa requires. So conditionally, yes, not a blanket green light. Here is the tricky part. Your visa can be approved without a single question about your tax situation. The consulate looks at your immigration file, not your tax exposure. So an approved visa tells you nothing about whether you're actually compliant once you're settled in France. That gap, approved on paper, exposed on the tax side, is exactly the kind of thing that costs people thousands months later. If you want to see this play out across all 5 sponsor-free visas, what changed in 2026 and the exact moments where people lose months without realizing it, I'm walking through it live in a free masterclass on September 15th, 2026. Link to register in the description. After that date, this same link takes you to the waitlist for the next session. Which brings me back to the teaser at the start of this video. Everything I just walked you through, the ministry's answer, the 3 conditions, the debunked rumor, all of it is about one thing only, your right to stay in France, your immigration status. It says nothing about taxes. And that's the gap almost nobody talks about. I've even seen a YouTube creator share a consulate email on camera, presenting it as proof that remote work was fully compliant. A consulate can confirm your visa status, your immigration status. It has no authority over your tax situation. That's a completely different administration with its own rules. An email like that proves nothing about your tax exposure, and treating it as a green light is exactly how people end up in trouble. Being cleared on the immigration side does not automatically mean you're in the clear on the tax side. French tax residency has its own separate criteria, and physically living in France is one of the biggest factors that can trigger it, regardless of what the Interior Ministry says about your visa status. 2 completely different administrations, 2 completely different sets of rules, and satisfying one does not satisfy the other. And here is something concrete. Many prefectures now ask for your most recent French tax notice, your avis d'imposition, when you renew your visitor visa, or more exactly, when you request your first residence permit. If you've been living in France and genuinely not filing, that's the moment it catches up with you. I also want to be honest that it isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. Your actual tax situation depends on the bilateral tax treaty between France and your home country. And those treaties differ from one country to another. What applies to a UK citizen isn't necessarily what applies to someone from the US or Canada or elsewhere. This is genuinely case by case. This is the exact confusion that trips people up. They read or watch that remote work is compatible and they assume that settles the whole question. It doesn't. So here is my honest, practical takeaway, not a general reassurance. If remote work for a foreign employer is genuinely part of your plan on a visitor visa, don't rely on this video, a forum, or even the Ministries of Interior response alone. Talk to a tax lawyer, an avocat fiscalist before you make the move, not after you've already settled in and the French tax authorities ask questions for you. If you want to go deeper on the legal ways to actually work while living in France, I've already covered that in a separate video and article linked in the description. So, can you really work remotely on a French visitor visa? Conditionally, yes, on the immigration side. But that was never the real question. The real question is whether you're compliant once you're actually living there. And that answer depends on your situation, not on a government response or a consulate email. That's the piece almost nobody explains correctly, and it's exactly what I wanted you to walk away with today. And if you want the full picture, not just this one visa, but where each of the 5 sponsor-free paths actually trips people up, the free masterclass registration link I mentioned earlier is in the description. That's it for today. Thank you for watching until the end. Merci et à bientôt!